Hello all, you are currently watching the Sonic series, a series in which I cover every mainline Sonic game and talk about my feelings on them. This is the penultimate episode of the series, where I will now cover Sonic Frontiers. Strap yourselves in folks, this'll be a long one. To some, the placement of Sonic Frontiers on this list is nothing new. I've mentioned my love for this game many times before. However, I don't think I've truly articulated why or even how my love for this game has grown over the years, as it's only gotten better with time. I first played this game back in 2023 and thought it was really good. It was a major step forward for the series, something I even knew back then, and I was eager to see more. About a year later, I found myself replaying the game and thought it was even better than before. This was also when the DLC campaign had released, so I tried playing through it all, but got stuck at a point you would all know. My next playthrough, however, this was something different. By then, I had played most other Sonic games out there due to the new hyperfixation brought on by Shadow Generations. I had learnt of the problems people have with the game and more, so I expected it to go down, but it didn't. In fact, I realized that this game is actually amongst my top 25 of all time. I like it more than Breath of the Wild. Not by much, but enough to place it over. This is an insane take, I know, but there are reasons for the ways I think. I'm making this video for a reason after all. So, allow me to take you through the entire game, covering every possible aspect I can muster to explain why Sonic Frontiers is my absolute favorite Sonic game. Let's begin. That's right, before we even get into the level design of this game, we have to talk about how it is structured, as no other Sonic game really plays like this one fundamentally. As I mentioned before, Sonic Frontiers was a major leap forward for the series, being the big, open-world debut. Instead of a linear set of levels you follow in order to reach a final boss, this game consists of 4 major islands to explore at your own pace, and one smaller one, collecting items and fighting giant mechs along the way. Now, this game needed to find a way to stand out from the huge crowd of other games like it, of course, so what does this game do? Let's cover each main progression system, as they all intertwine in some way. Let's start small with the map. Across each island, you find mini puzzles/challenges which allow you to see a little bit more of the map each time you complete one. These puzzles range from a simple switch press to a huge obstacle course taking you across the map. There is a huge variety of puzzles you can find, making this not ever feel stale to me. I especially like the ones where you run over the lit up panels and those previously mentioned obstacle courses. Some of these are a bit too simple for their own good, however, such as the hamster wheels and the jump ropes. Due to how the parry works in the latter, you can basically skip it entirely. Once you complete the entire map, fast travel will be unlocked for you, which may sound annoying at first, but because of how fun traversal is on its own, I don't believe I've ever really used it across my 4 or 5 playthroughs. Yeah, this is a good thing to me. Up next are the Guardians scattered around each island. These unlock the cyberspace portals, which in turn allow you to obtain the Chaos Emeralds. Again, there's a huge variety of bosses to fight, some being upgrades of previous ones, but most being entirely original to each island. Kronos Island features Azura, Ninja, Tower, and Squid. Azura is very fun, especially if you attempt a quick kill by running up its body before it slams its fists down. Ninja is okay, but it's really just a more powerful basic enemy at this point. Tower and its variants are all very interesting, as you can tackle them in a huge variety of ways. You can run up its body and attack its head for a super fast takedown, or you could take it slow and destroy its body parts until the head is what's left. The only real dud here is Squid, who just takes forever to even get a chance to attack. Ares Island is generally weaker, as I'm not a fan of Sumo due to its janky way of being defeated. Shark is okay, but it boils down to 10 QTEs really. I quite like Strider, mainly because of how awesome and huge it is, but also because I think it's fun to spin around the whole thing. I like how Tank makes you more careful about how you space your attacks to it in its attacking phase, but that's all there is to it. Chaos Island is heavily composed of more challenging versions of Kronos Island's bosses. Fortress, Shinobi, and Excavator are all much better than Squid, Ninja, and Tower respectively. Spider is this island's only unique fight, but it's not really as interesting as the others. Finally is Ouranos Island, and this one might have the best selection. Caterpillar is a better Strider, and there are even 2 harder versions of Ninja, Kunoichi and Master Ninja. Ghost is probably the best one there is in the whole game, however. You have to explore a mini obstacle course whilst rings are being drained from you. It's super fun, especially when you try out some silly shortcuts. And that's everything. I really like finding these bosses, especially when you get to a decently high skill level and cheese some aspect. This then leads on to the next major aspect. Combat. Frontiers' combat is a strange little thing, as it has the right puzzle pieces to be super in-depth and full of originality, but there's just one little thing here and there to make it far more simple. Firstly, you start the game with a simple 4-hit combo, a dodge, and a parry. You can make do with these for a bit, but to have more fun, you gotta use skill points. You can get these from defeating enemies, random boxes, and glowing springs once you get the trick skill. This skill tree is pretty simple, all things considered, but it allows you to get unique special attacks to perform with a special button combination. These elevate the combat tenfold. It is a blast chaining tons of these attacks together at once just to obliterate anything in your path. It may not require much effort, especially considering how most enemies can't stop you once you begin an attack chain, but it's fun to me, and that's really all I care about. There is one move that bugs me, unfortunately, because of how easy it is to make better from a gameplay standpoint: the parry. Holding both bumpers down will keep you in a permanent state where any attack thrown at you will be countered. It even holds you in the air, which is surprisingly useful for higher platforming segments. The problem, however, is that there is no cooldown, or anything to stop you from holding it indefinitely. No matter how long you prepare a parry for, if something hits you in the state, it will be countered, time slows, and you can wail on it. This is so simple to fix, because so many games of this type have a solution. Make it an actual parry. Tapping the bumpers will trigger the parry, but holding them could be a guard, blocking some damage but removing the slowdown. This would make high-level play so much more satisfying in my opinion, as you actually have to learn the enemy attacks like any other Souls-like, which is clearly what the combat is inspired by. It doesn't ruin it for me clearly, but it definitely bugs me. Don't you worry, we'll talk about that thing much later. Overall, like I said before, the combat could easily be a slam dunk if it altered just a few tiny things. What I love about this game's structure is how every collectible and thing you do feeds into progression in some way. I briefly mentioned before how one thing leads to another in the Guardian talk, but let's go into that more. Guardians give you portal gears unlock cyberspace, cyberspace unlocks vault keys unlock chaos emeralds unlock finished game. This structure is what the game is all about, yet it doesn't feel linear as you can do whatever one of these you want on each island. You could start with Squid, then go to 1-5, and get the first emerald if you so choose. I also love how the amount of times you need to do this loop changes depending on how good you do in cyberspace. There are 4 missions for each cyberspace stage, and they each give you 1 vault key. If you get all 4 for every mission you complete, this significantly reduces the amount of bosses you need to fight, making for a faster experience. I love this so much, as I can just choose to avoid the bosses I don't like to have a more fun experience. In general, this game encourages you to just not do the stuff you dislike, which I think is goddamn awesome. This is mainly because of one of the last things I need to mention. Each island features a cyberspace portal that actually takes you to a fishing minigame with Big the Cat. Collecting the purple coins scattered around each island, as well as getting them from the random Starfall event that can happen at night, gives you a chance to fish for items and fish. There's a heck of a lot of stuff to find in these waters, ranging from tiny tadpoles to anglerfish. Each rarity of fish gets you a few tokens to spend in the shop, where you can get literally everything. Don't want to fight the bosses? Grab a portal gear or 2. Hate cyberspace? Nab some vault keys to completely skip it. You can also get some upgrade items and extra lore memos we'll touch on later, but this is a very strange thing to include, isn't it? If you get enough purple coins, you could literally beat an entire island by just fishing. I don't think this would happen to a casual player, and it's not even ideal for high-level play, plus it's not really that fun. I love fishing, but you'd need to fish for about an hour or two just to finish one island. I'm glad this is here, of course, the music is exceptional, it's just an interesting little aspect of the game to think about. Finally, my favourite aspect of this game's progression are the memory tokens. Not all Chaos Emeralds are gathered through the system mentioned previously. Some are from progressing the main story of the island through collecting these tokens scattered around everywhere. You'll mainly find these amongst these tiny platforming challenges all over the place. These are where the main gameplay comes from. And what I love about this is how one challenge can easily flow into another. They tend to leave you high in the air once they're done, so you'll probably be able to land right onto an entirely separate challenge not that far away from you. It's a constant loop of, oh, let's do this, oh, let's do that, what's over there, how can I get that without doing all of that? And it is so damn liberating. This is the key gameplay reason as to why I love this game so much. The constant discovery of finding a new challenge to do, as well as finding a way to cheese it due to how momentum can work. I know, momentum was technically removed from this game, but if you enable the ability to maintain boost during a jump in the settings, which was added in a content update post-release, you can find so many creative ways of skipping challenges entirely, and it is so damn fun! Anyways, back onto the tokens. They let you interact with the side character of the island, and sometimes lead to a small minigame or puzzle you have to complete to progress the story along. They range from hunting a few Koco and avoiding bombs, to loading a cannon and firing it at a plug to drain water. Some of these are definitely better than others. The collecting bolts one is really good, I like the bullet hell minigames, and the one with the 4 towers is a good way of testing if you know how the enemies really work. There are a few stinkers, unfortunately, the biggest one being the goddamn pinball. The physics can be really jank, and restarting so close to the end of this 3 to 5 minute long slog can be so disheartening. I've struggled with this so damn much on an earlier playthrough, but it's at least been easier more recently. Overall though, I like these, they function decently well as breaks from the main gameplay loop. And that is the structure of Sonic Frontiers complete. Every separate gameplay mechanic I've wanted to mention before tackling the quote-unquote level design. I told you this would be a long one. Yeah, I can't deny the flaws that are present here. Not everything is perfect, and I don't even adore everything listed either. However, the best stuff is straight up the best of the franchise to me. I don't feel the sense of flow and excitement I get from this game anywhere else, and it is consistently a joy to replay, time and time again. It doesn't appeal to everyone, but it appeals to me. On to level design. Well, not quite, as there's technically not straight up level design in this game, excluding cyberspace of course, because the bulk of the gameplay takes place on the open world islands. This naturally makes them a bit difficult to talk about from a design perspective, as you can do the individual bits of platforming in any order you desire. I'll still try my best to explain why I love exploring these places at least, so let's cover each of them. First up, Kronos Island. The tutorial is long-winded and boring, but once this place opens up to you, it truly starts to click. There's a good variety of challenges here that never feel samey, from reaching the top of this tower in a short time, to this extended platforming segment to reach this giant diamond in the sky. It all flows very naturally from one another, and there are some parts of the ground here and there which allow for some skips. The more secluded forest area is memorable, the music is very pleasant, and there's very little jank that comes in your way. There's unfortunately not a ton of memorability when it comes to aesthetics, however, and whilst the ground does get bumpy occasionally, it's not as interesting as with the other islands, so I'll probably consider this one the second weakest of the game, personally. It's still a 7 out of 10. Ares Island is probably the one most would consider their favourite on an initial playthrough, and I can totally see why. Its huge desert towards the beginning may seem empty at a glance, but it is chock full of sections of land to jump off of, which is extremely impressive for a desert theme. It also neatly flows into the second half, being more focused on giant canyons with even more shenanigans. Thinking outside the box is extremely encouraged, and the more focused platforming sections are even better too. The sense of danger is ever present, and I like how there are simple but clear routes to take. I also think the visual style is much stronger, which leads me to believe that this area was designed with the scope of each island in mind the most. Yeah, if you don't know, Kronos Island was intended to be much larger than it is in-game, because Ouranos and Ares are split off parts of said island. I believe that because of tester feedback saying that this giant island was not interesting enough, the devs scaled back for future islands, allowing for much more to be packed into each. We'll get back to this of course, but Ares Island is representative of this. It feels ginormous, but not overwhelming, with tons of memorable set pieces and fun to be found. Chaos Island is a bit of a controversial one, at least when the game was released. The bumpy ground led to a lot of annoyance, and a lot of the memory token challenges are 2D, and the pinballs here. I'm here, however, to say that this island is goddamn awesome! The bumpy ground is its greatest aspect, as it allows for some insanely fun skips that completely avoid the admittedly more annoying 2D. I don't hate it obviously, but it's not nearly as interesting as the 3D segments you can find. The aesthetics are also by far my favourite here, combining a giant volcano with a freezing mountain, ash-covered rocks, and a unique and a memorable hot spring area. This is easily the best looking area of the whole game in my eyes. I'd love to see this kind of stuff expanded upon later. You can also do a lot with the environment itself here throughout the story, such as using this Death Egg robot from Forces to shoot a laser at the ground, allowing you to travel underground to a far-off island. This area is super cool too, by the way. Traveling to each island via these rails is great fun, and the whole place feels super jam-packed compared to every other. Ares Island is wide and open to showcase the vastness of the desert, which I do like, but because everything is so close together here, you barely spend any time at all on the ground, because you're in the air doing a challenge. This is likely the most adrenaline-pilled area of the whole game, maybe making it my favourite even gameplay-wise. It's tough to choose between this one and Ares, but the aesthetics of this one likely takes it over. People who have not played this game may be confused at why I've been saying that there are 4 islands to explore and not 5, because the marketing shows 5. Well, this is because Rhea Island, number 4, is not structured like the others. All you gotta do to progress to the next is reach the top of these 6 towers due to story reasons we'll get into later. You can even see that this place is still part of Kronos Island, which I at least didn't notice until my most recent playthrough. This is quite unfortunate of course, as having all the content that was intended to be in the game would have been ideal, but I think the developers did the best with what they were given. These towers are some of the toughest bits of platforming found throughout the game, and one wrong move will send you hurtling back down to the bottom. This is probably frustrating to some, but I absolutely love it and its sense of scale. Seeing the entire island from such a high angle is so cool. Plus, if you do end up falling, you can use the busted parry to stay in place, gather your bearings, and find a nearby spring to homing attack. Let's quickly cover my thoughts on each tower. Tower 1 feels more like an extended version of the challenges you find all over the place, so it's one of the weaker ones to me. Number 2 was all about rail grinding, and I love that towards the end it puts more agency on your reaction time by launching you off them prematurely. Tower 3 is a 2D one focusing on wall running, and it can be a little jank, but still a fun time to skip across. Tower 4 is mostly enemy focused, and it creates some cool arenas here and there whilst utilising these enemies in new ways. Tower 5 is another 2D one, again focusing on rails. It can flow really well from one section to another. Finally, the last tower incorporates more focused wall running segments into 3D, something the game should have done more often. It's usually automated sadly, but I like what they do with it here. And that's Rhea. It's a super fun section of the game, despite what could have been. Now we reach the final island, Ouranos. Again, this was supposed to be part of Kronos, so like that island and Rhea, the visual design is unfortunately standard. I think if they made one of these islands more focused on the weather, that would make them easier to differentiate, and therefore more memorable and distinct. Anyways, this place is pretty much on the same level as Ares and Chaos gameplay-wise. It definitely has more 3D sections than Chaos, if that's consolation, and it's definitely more bumpy than Ares. There's a lot of memorable locations, like the giant pyramid structure, the island off to the side reminiscent of a Kronos structure, and the swampy area around the west side. This one is also differently structured from the rest. There's barely any required locations to progress the story with a side character, all the emeralds are found on the island, not within a minigame, and the 2 required story segments need a ton of memory tokens for progression. This is the only island where I feel like I need to use the map, only to scrounge up the last few tokens I need before the finale. It's clear that this island was made quite close to release, which does make it feel a little stilted and awkward to play. Nevertheless, that doesn't bother me one bit. I love this place to death, and I think the gameplay is enough to make this a great final island. And that's all the islands. Despite 3 of them having basically the same visual theme, I think they all manage to stand out in unique ways. I can pinpoint the giant diamond structure from Kronos, the extended platforming to the side of Ares, basically anything about Chaos, any one of the awesome tower climbs from Rhea, and the super unique flow of Ouranos. They all manage to feel different, and they all manage to be fun. Insanely fun. I, of course, do have gripes with how the island structure is handled, but I'll save any problems for a section of the video later. For now, we're still not done with the main game. There's one major part of it that I still need to talk about, and it's arguably the most controversial. It's time for... So, using portal gears at these portals unlock a single cyberspace stage, which is where the more traditional 3D Sonic gameplay takes place. There's a start and a finish, go from point A to point B as fast as possible. Why could they make this stuff controversial, you ask? Well, it's because of a whole bunch of weird stuff. First, but not last, the control in these levels is really goddamn weird. Sonic in the open zones is probably the best control we've gotten out of the character in 3D ever, so it's extremely confusing and baffling that they decided to change it up in this strange way. Turning is really off, the speed is bafflingly low, and it's not nearly as exciting as the games this style tries to replicate. Oh, speaking of replication, most of these cyberspace stages are literally carbon copies of already existing ones. If it looks like you're tackling Sky Sanctuary from Generations, that's because you are. This is just kinda really weird, and clearly a budgeting decision. There is a story reason for it. Sonic's memories are being jumbled around, and that's why the stages look different from the way they did before in some cases. But they couldn't go all the way with it. Make the Green Hill stages look like Metropolitan Highway, or have Green Forest look like the stages that played Seam Bottom Segway from Lost World. You have a ton more assets to choose from, even within the Hedgehog engine too, so go wild. Finally, this isn't as bad as the other decisions in my eyes, but the extra missions are just really easy. I love this idea, I've even said it's what should be done going forward, but make at least one of the missions tougher than the rest, preferably the S-rank requirements. From finishing all 4 missions on one stage, you get 3 extra vault keys, clearly showing a skill gap that could be exploited. If these required mastery of the stages, boom, best game ever, simple. There is one major exception, that being Stage 1-2, and that is widely regarded as one of the best, so take notes. All of this bashing may seem like I don't like this stuff, but here's the thing, I do. I really like cyberspace. It's obviously not perfect, but I really enjoy some of these stages, maybe more than their original counterparts in rare cases. At the end of the day, we've got good level design here because we've ripped off already good stages. Some of them are kinda ass, of course, so you know what, let's give a sentence of my thoughts on every cyberspace stage in the game. I'd do more, but then the video would probably be longer than the game itself, so let's go. 1-1, database. A pretty basic one, unfortunately, not gonna wow you out of the gate. 1-2, flowing. The stricter time limit genuinely makes this one, it's great. 1-3, digital cave. Decent flow, but pretty forgettable. 1-4, Genshi. Pretty automated, even for cyberspace, but still kinda fun. 1-5, Dropaholic. Lives a bit too much in the level it's copying's shadow, but has the same memorable skips and is still a great one. 1-6, go back to your roots. Definitely one of the worst hit levels in terms of speed, making it probably one of the weakest. 1-7, Time Flyer. Definitely a personal favourite, it's based on City Escape after all. 2-1, Slice and Sway. A very by the numbers level, too similar to 1-6. 2-2 Heavenly Sky. A really short but really sweet time, definitely a guilty pleasure pick. 2-3 Nostalgic Sweep. A lot of samey bits in this one, should be more intense for sure. 2-4 Hype Street. A surprisingly complex one despite its linearity. 2-5 Deja Vu. Definitely requires a better player than I, but pretty decent. 2-6 Transparent Highway. Lots of fun to be had thanks to skipping rail grinds, definitely one of the best. 2-7 Floating in the Blue. One of the more technical 2D stages, more fun than I remember. 3-1 Escape the Loop. A pretty tough and technical one to master, but doesn't flow as well as the others. 3-2 Go Slap. Uses the best camera angle for 2D sections at the end, but has an impossible to dodge spike trap towards the beginning. 3-3 Memory Will Tell. Easily one of the best in the whole game. Sky Sanctuary Act 2 just never misses. 3-4 Constructure. One of the most boring ones in the game, due to how speed works on 2D rails. 3-5 BMB. One of the worst ones if you use drift panels, but can be decently fun if you jump across the gaps instead. 3-6 Enjoy This World. One of the longest and toughest to master, but also has some kind of boring segments. 3-7 All Reality. One of the best 2D levels if done right, really tough to get down. 4-1 Exceed Mark. Another really solid one, probably because it's based on Metal Harbor, the GOAT. 4-2 Ephemeral. A really solid original stage, tons of branching paths to see. 4-3 Rumble Rave. One of the weirdest original stages in the game, but surprisingly works well. 4-4 Wishes in the Wind. Another surprisingly brilliant original stage, a fun one to speedrun. 4-5 Arrow of Time. A really good concept for a stage, just needs some touching up to be truly great. 4-6 Fog Funk. A decently fun technical 2D stage, but I prefer the other ones for sure. 4-7 Rewind to Go Ahead. Not badly designed at all, but it didn't really flow too well and is extremely forgettable. 4-8 No Pain, No Gain. Extremely short, not that interesting, but has a kinda decent flow if done well. 4-9 Signs. Kind of a limp way to end the game. At least it's a neat idea. Okay, we are done. That was 30 individual levels talked about at once, and as you can tell, I enjoy my time in most of these. Granted, some of these are enjoyed thanks to content updates adding new features, but at the end of the day, I have a lot of fun in cyberspace. It's obviously not as good as something like Generations or Unleashed, but at least you need to put in more effort than Forces. And hey, if you don't like it, maybe try out a neat speedrunning trick called the homing dash, where you boost before hitting a homing attack target. It absolutely launches you in some cases, allowing for even more skips to be found. I'm okay to sticking with what I know personally, but it is nice to try out every now and then. Nevertheless, I think it's about time I start covering the story, and I've got a ton to gush over here. But what if I missed something? What if there was some enormous aspect of the gameplay I've neglected to mention up until now? You know what it is. It's time for the most important part of this entire game. At the end of each of the first 3 islands is a fight against a Titan, basically an even more scaled up version of the Guardians from before. You encounter them in a scene earlier from the island, where you basically have to survive as they are far too powerful for normal Sonic to take on. You gather the emeralds as a means to take them down, with the 7th and final emerald being on the Titan itself once you get the rest. There's a small sequence of reaching the top of the Titan each time, which is super cool, but once you get it, history is made. These boss fights are seriously some of the best the franchise has seen. Nothing is cooler than them. Giganto is the most shocking, and probably the one you remember the most. After a whole roughly 5 hours of exploring the first island with atmospheric music and the occasional EDM, you get absolutely blasted with the most hardcore rock you will ever hear in your life. This is a defining character moment right here, due to the sheer aura and confidence it oozes. This is proof that the developers of this game tried harder than any other has on an official Sonic title to me, that they truly cared to try and make Sonic cool again. And it worked. This moment and boss is ingrained into the hearts and minds of so many now, because it proves that Sonic can be as awesome as he always was meant to be. The boss itself isn't really too interesting from a gameplay perspective, to be honest, but it feels so cool as you're taking down this giant kaiju, the likes of which this series has never done as a first major fight. I love this stuff to absolute death. And then you remember that there are more islands and more titans. Wyvern is probably the weakest one in terms of gameplay, unfortunately. It entirely relies on parrying for its whole duration, so you can just stay still and wait for all of it. The scope of this fight is still damn awesome, however, as you fly along this giant across the entirety of Ares. There are some killer animations too, like picking up this huge entity and lobbing it at a nearby hill, or slamming its mouth wide open to lead homing missiles back at it for the final blow. I do also like the amount of unique attacks it can choose to do. There's a lot more than you'd think. That's unfortunately everything I think I need to say though. Really fun, but not as exciting as the others. At least the music is still absolute heat. Knight, on the other hand, is probably the best designed one. You get to pilot his buzzsaw shield in the first phase as a means of counterattacking. There's just as many cool cinematics as all the other fights, and there are mechanics that require more effort than just a parry. Phase 2 has the previously mentioned buzzsaw shield fly around the map, where you have to parry it, then aim and launch it back at the Knight, allowing you to attack him. It's a super cool mechanic. I wish stuff like that was done more often. I do think the sheer shock value of Giganto makes that one my favourite and the most memorable, but this one is easily the best in terms of gameplay, and the flashiness and intense music never stop coming. That is all I'll say about these for now. There is the final boss, of course, but we'll save that for when we get there in the story. It is so easy to get completely enamored by these fights, even when watching them go. Even if the style of music isn't for you, you can't deny how much of a power play this was on Sonic Team's end. They chose to keep these fights and songs a secret from us all, so we could be as shocked as humanly possible to find out about these legendary moments. Again, the gameplay may not be the greatest thing out there, and there are other franchises which may have pulled off similar stuff before. However, Sonic has not had this amount of hype and, for a lack of better term, aura since Unleashed. Maybe Black Knight if you ask the right guy. This is exactly what the franchise needed back in 2022, and leaves me with so much intrigue and excitement about what's next. Anyways, let's actually move on to the story now, as there is a lot, and I mean a lot, to talk about there. Sonic Frontiers' story was kind of an extremely big deal at launch, as it brought upon us a new era of Sonic storytelling. The 2010s were full of silly stories, wacky characters, and mostly not funny jokes. Forces was a glimpse into a potentially dark and serious narrative again, but it didn't land for so many reasons that I've already detailed a year ago at this point. Frontiers was a way of proving that new writers were what this series needed in order to tell a compelling story, as the previous ones just didn't care. Don't look at me, they said it themselves. I think it's extremely clear that Frontiers' story absolutely knocks it out of the park for me, and to explain why, we'll tackle it island by island, as with every other aspect of the vid so far. Let's start at the beginning. We begin with Eggman coming across an ancient statue, which he places some device on to activate it. This summons a whole bunch of wacky robots, including a giant one the size of which we've never seen before. The device then starts to go against Eggman and traps him inside the statue, setting up the main beats of the story. We know that there are robots owned by an ancient civilization, and Eggman wanted to control them for his evil purposes. This is an extremely subtle setup, especially for a Sonic game, but it works really well to set the tone and foreshadow events later down the line. We then cut to Sonic, Tails, and Amy in the tornado, flying towards some islands in search of the Chaos Emeralds. Something drew them to the islands, but when in close proximity, they get forcefully trapped in a strange wormhole, again as a setup to this side of the story. I believe there are 3 different sides to this game's narrative: Sonic and his friend's problems, Eggman and his mysterious new robot co-worker, and the events of the distant past. We'll prioritize the Sonic stuff for the most part, as we get to see that the most. Let's begin with Kronos Island, and Amy's love. After the first cyberspace stage, Sonic wakes up alone in the middle of nowhere when a mysterious voice suddenly calls out to him. It congratulates him on escaping cyberspace and asks him to
find the Chaos Emeralds, destroy the Titans, tear down the walls between dimensions.
This is Sonic's only lead towards figuring things out, so he just does what he's told. Cut to after the tutorial. Sonic then finds Amy trapped in some cyberspace sphere thingy. After saving her through finding some memory tokens, the real analysis begins. Like most other Sonic stories, the characters and relationships are truly what makes them shine, and it's no different here. After a decade of cheesy characters and wacky jokes, this game grounds everyone down to the most human they've ever felt, to be honest. Sonic's voice delivery is the lowest it's ever been to reflect the more serious tone of the narrative, and I've always loved this decision. It makes the hard-hitting scenes hit even harder, and the same could be said for Amy too. She's not super low-pitched of course, but her delivery is so natural and human, unlike pretty much every other game in this series. She's always had a high-pitched, cutesy voice to herself, which always did fit, don't get me wrong, but I can't imagine Amy from 06 delivering a line in this manner.
No, but I got a sense of completion, comfort.
This applies to every other character in the game, so yeah, the voice acting is top-notch here. On to how the story goes. Each one of the first 3 islands all give each side character the main theme of moving on, or leaving to find greater purpose. Let's see how Amy comes to this conclusion. She comes across a Koco who can't find their true love before the end times. She clearly sees herself in them because, you know, that's sort of been her character for a good while, so she decides to help them out. Sonic, however, doesn't really seem to care all that much at first. He's laser focused on trying to find a way to help his friends out of this strange cyberspace equilibrium, but Amy quickly rebukes this by asking if Sonic wouldn't help a person in need. This is such a cool character moment to me, and there's more where that came from. When Amy asks Sonic to help out the Koco, Sonic immediately hits them with
Read the back here, please.
Sure thing.
Before she can even finish the sentence, showing how much he cares about helping others. He'd do it no matter the circumstances. Eventually, the mysterious robot helping Eggman comes along to attempt to stop Sonic from doing what he does. Amy stands up against them, however, saying that Sonic wouldn't hurt anyone, in a strangely similar moment to in 06. Definitely not a reference, just similar circumstances is all. This simply reinstates the care the two of them have for each other, and it's wonderful to see the two of them on an even playing field for once. I also love how there are scenes that show that everyone is trying to piece together what happened in the past here, like this one. Sonic theorizes that these emerald altars are built with them in mind, as if the ancients used them in the past. Maybe they tried to contain the emeralds instead of using them? It's so cool to see, man. Anyways, let's get back to Amy now, who just come across the set One True Love. We suddenly get a flashback scene, where we see 2 ancient creatures meet together and hug, before a giant explosion engulfs them all. Cut back to the present, where the two are now Koco, who've lost consciousness. This has affected Amy a ton, and she clearly does a lot of thinking in between this scene and the next. She believes in the power of a love that transcends time, the way the love those two Kocos have, leading her to the decision to share said love with the world. It'll take her far away from Sonic, but he believes in her too. He knows when others need space away from him, and vice versa, leading to a fantastic scene and fantastic arc. This is one of Amy's best appearances for sure, and I am so excited to see where things will go soon. Now, let's go over to Ares, where someone unexpected is having a rough time. Before we get into that, however, we need to learn how Knuckles even got here in the first place. Released near to the launch of the main game was a short animation detailing how Knuckles managed to get trapped on the Starfall Islands like all the others, and it is imperative to know for what we're covering. Knuckles is having an average day on Angel Island, thinking about his past and how his situation came to be, alongside how far back these ruins truly go. He then explores Sky's sanctuary for answers, helping out any adorable chow along the way, and comes across a portal gear with a cyberspace portal alongside it. Putting 2 and 2 together, he places the thing in the thing and is taken to Rhea Island, where he is jumped by some enemies. After some incredibly animated action, like holy moly is it good, he comes across a Titan and Eggman's helper, who then jump him and trap him inside the cyberspace sphere. It ends with an inner monologue repeating the words he said at the beginning, yet adding,
"But sometimes..."
at the end. Not only is this animation just goddamn awesome, it characterizes Knuckles brilliantly too. Not a single line of dialogue feels like something he wouldn't say or do, and this fits perfectly into the main game's narrative. Knuckles thinks throughout this whole thing that he is alone, and doesn't need anyone else. That final line is the spark for his arc in the game, and it is a brilliant send-off. There's still a heck of a lot to analyze within the game itself, of course, so let's jump into it. Knuckles and Sonic's relationship in this game may just be one of my favorites in any Sonic game. Not just between the two, but across any you can think of. They feel like lifelong friends who butt heads with each other a lot, yet couldn't care more about one another. There's so goddamn many little mannerisms that just make me giddy with how fun they are, like how Sonic smiles cheekily to himself before setting him free, or how they look real snarky at each other at the end of said scene. In terms of Knuckles himself, he's just as charming as memorable as he always was. Laid back and usually calm, but can get a little hot-headed if pressured. He punches first, asks questions later, shown off in this scene. He blocks an incoming attack from Eggman's companion and attempts to retaliate, but Sonic stops him swiftly, stating that he believes that they're trying to protect something. It is a brilliant moment for all three characters in the scene, progressing the deeper narrative wonderfully. Eventually, the two come across an army of Koco, and the same thing as with Amy happens. They help him out, we get a flashback scene of them getting attacked brutally, and they move on. This game places heavy emphasis on the Echidna backstory Knuckles has, which is wonderful as that was completely forgotten after Adventure 2. This army clearly represents how the Echidnas were a warrior-focused tribe, and that aspect is still something Knuckles holds close to himself. Throughout these scenes, Knuckles is clearly shown to want to do stuff on his own. He wants to attack the mysterious robot girl against Sonic's wishes, and he doesn't really ever think of getting help from others immediately. However, when looking at some ruins that look strikingly similar to some on Angel Island, he starts to think about a lot more. When some towers attack, he starts to panic as if he can't protect something he holds so close to himself, but Sonic helps him out. We hear a genuine thank you from Knuckles as Sonic goes to bash their skulls in. This is where the army of Koco moves on, of course leading to Knuckles' reflection, one of my favorite scenes in the franchise. The two sit down for a more casual chit-chat about these events. Knuckles talks about how similar the Echidna situation was to the Ancients, and how it reminds him of how alone he truly is as the last Echidna on the planet. Sonic then reminds him that he's not alone. He's got Tails, the Chaotix, and of course, himself to fall back on. Knuckles appreciates how free Sonic is compared to him, to which he replies with,
"So do it. Get out there and live a little."
Maybe I could.
This is the drive Knuckles needs right now, to truly explore new areas and find more meaning than just protecting a silly emerald. The two then have genuinely great banter with one another, and laugh it off, ending the scene exceptionally. I mean, there's the stuff that the red girl says, but let's not worry about that. This is one of the most genuine scenes of dialogue I've seen in a game. You can feel the friendship, the history these two have from every word said, and it is wonderful to see Knuckles finally get some closure after all these years. I genuinely can't get over how real this scene feels to me. It nails absolutely everything it tries to do. Knuckles' story in this game is about closure, and opening up more to the people around you, and it is done brilliantly here. Tails has had an extremely rough time when it comes to his characterization since the adventure games. He had a clear character arc that most games just ignored. From there, it was free reign to do whatever you want with him. He went from a supportive sidekick with zero story relevance, to a self-centered prick who only thinks for himself, to a scaredy cat not knowing how to do anything on his own. This left Ian Flynn in an interesting spot for the character. What do you do with a character as inconsistently written as Tails? Make his inconsistency part of the character. Let's cover how they do this then. Once Tails is free, he immediately understands his situation and Sonic's, and right away starts to help him out. This is clearly a version of the dude who cares about the others around him, and tries his best no matter what. Later on, you find him investigating some old ruins, when it suddenly turns on and shows another bit of the ancient's past. I think this one being in 2D is quite strange, but it still feels dramatic and well done nonetheless. It basically shows what we've been seeing on a larger scale, proving how powerful this being in the past truly was. Eventually, Tails comes across an engineer Koco who needs to find the last few parts to make weapons. We sorta get how this goes at this point, right? You and Tails help him out, Tails sees himself in the dude, they move on, Tails thinks about the future. What's different this time, however, is that Eggman's companion barges in here and there to ask questions that make him doubt himself more. She asks if Tails can truly trust how Sonic's handling the situation, to which he replies, of course he does. Sonic's done this time and time again, so why would this time be any different? After they say stuff about how nothing will matter in the end, they swiftly leave the convo, leading Tails to start doubting himself again. In the next scene with them two, he asks if Sonic thinks he's a burden to him, to which Sonic obviously does not. He doesn't like being on the sidelines all the time. He thinks that he doesn't do anything while Sonic goes to save him constantly. Sonic then rebukes him with facts and logic. Station Square would have been destroyed if he wasn't there to save it, for instance. Tails then states exactly what I stated about his character from a meta angle. He's inconsistent. Sonic then, once again, states all the awesome stuff he can do. Getting help is just a part of growing up. Remember, Tails is still canonically supposed to be quite young, so this would explain the inconsistency that has come to his character all these years. He's been growing up, learning what he wants to do and be throughout all these past games. He just needed someone to explain that to him so he could truly understand that. This is a super smart way of tackling a character with this much weirdness about them. And that scene of him stating that he needs to grow as a person away from Sonic for a while, it's such good clarity that we all needed. This is about everything I feel I need to say about Tails in this game. His arc is really well done, his interactions with Sonic never get old, I mean he calls him little bro, and it comes together with all the previous arcs well too. It's time to cover the next island, where things start to get a bit iffy, sadly. After each tower of Rhea Island is complete, you get a little snippet of insight into what the Ancients' true backstory is. Let's cover it all then. First up, we see them with a Chaos Emerald talking about making an escape. After that, a legion of ships leave a planet, which soon after gets completely destroyed from a single laser, leaving all the remaining Ancients in a panic. We also get a few scenes of Sonic suffering more and more from his cyber corruption garnered from saving his friends, but he just never lets up. He needs to do what he has to do. The next scene shows the ships landing on a new planet, and the Chaos Emeralds suddenly react to something nearby, the Master Emerald. We then skip a good while to when cyberspace is constructed. All their thoughts, memories, and history is stored here. Suddenly, a different ancient being calls the supposed leader out, to tell them that whatever destroyed their home planet followed them to this one, leaving him truly speechless. The next scene shows the Titans being constructed, and it explains that they were used to fend off this mysterious entity. Up last is a complete explanation of what Sonic's visions were after defeating each Titan. These were the last moments of the original Ancients who piloted them, where they all sacrificed themselves in order to seal this unstoppable force in cyberspace. After this, the cyber corruption subplot comes back to bite Sonic, as it becomes too much for him to bear. He freezes in place, just at the time when he finishes what he thinks he started. Everyone surrounds him, including Eggman and his companion. She then suddenly pipes up, begging for Eggman to go back into cyberspace immediately, because something has just awoken again.
Since time immemorial, I have languished here. The locks are broken.
So yeah, we were secretly helping out the evil entity that destroyed the ancients millennia ago, and it's ready to consume all, once and for all. Tails and the gang won't give up, however, and they use their care towards Sonic shown throughout the game to bring him back, to truly finish what he started. An allegiance is formed between him and Eggman due to a greater power being present, and the endgame begins. So, as I stated before, this is where the story becomes a bit iffy, as it's clear to me that more was going to be done with this. They put a lot of effort into showing how much pain the cyber corruption caused on Sonic, even changing his idle animations for each island, so for it all to be completely swept under the rug like this feels really weird. There is also an argument to be made about why Sonic would trust the mystery voice instead of the real girl, but I disagree with this one. Sage, that's her name by the way, only acts antagonistically towards him, and he tries his best to understand the situation. She is the one to refuse answering any questions, because she already knows the path things are going. The mystery voice only ever helps Sonic out. It tells him where to go and what to do, giving him the basic answers he needs. Plus, Sonic says this in a separate cutscene to Sage.
If they want to start trouble, I'll stop them too.
You certainly make it sound simple.
He clearly has no idea of what the voice is and how powerful it is, so he just assumes everything will be fine in the end, even if it tries to backfire on him. This isn't poor character writing at all to me. It makes perfect sense for Sonic to be narrow-minded in this way. He did something similar in Black Knight, for crying out loud. I got a bit distracted there, but I still really like this moment. I think it's a better compromise than just not doing anything with it at all, like with Null Space Enforcers. Plus, I think the Ancients being the origins of the Chaos Emeralds is really neat. I don't think it contradicts anything about previous games because this happened so far in the past, to the point where it really doesn't matter how they came to be. So yeah, this stuff is a little mixed, but I still overall like it. Now we get to Ouranos Island, and this is where we'll go somewhere a bit different, and talk about Eggman and Sage's relationship throughout the game. In Big's shop at the fishing minigame, you can purchase Eggman memos, which are basically little voice recordings from Eggman about different things. These are deeply fascinating, as like all other characters, we get to see a more mellow side of the character that's not seen anywhere else. He sounds like a true genius here, wondering about how the Ancients' technology works, comparing it to other large databases, and it really sounds like he respects everything he's seeing, even if he wants it for himself. One thing to note, however, is that the further you go through these, the more he seems to focus on Sage. He talks about silly stories she tells him, starts to refer to her by more respectful pronouns impulsively, and even thinks about if Maria was anything like Sage is now. This is easily the most human Eggman has ever been presented, and it's such a cool way of progressing his character. He had no one to care for him growing up, so he spent his whole life believing that no one could. Once Sage came along, however, things started to change. He cares about her, and she cares about him back. He even considers the fact that Sage is his daughter, who he created via robotic parts instead of dumb proteins. I also love how he respects Sonic despite his hatred, shown many times throughout the game, alongside his friends who he talks about in these memos. I especially love the one about comparing Tails to himself. This is such a cool way of giving a character more time in the spotlight without making huge cutscenes for them, if obtaining these memos was done in a slightly more interesting way. I love fishing, of course, but I believe the Eggman pods scattered around the islands were going to be used for these, so there's that. Anyways, let's pivot our focus onto Sage, as she gets a ton more focus in the cutscenes themselves. I think it's pretty clear that because this is my favourite Sonic game, Sage is one of my favourite Sonic characters. I mean, she's my most played character in Crossworlds, come on. I love how they completely take advantage of her being an AI, in that her thoughts and feelings are purely based on statistical reasoning. Throughout the whole game, she believes there is no way of stopping this final force in the sky, and gets so excited when the option to work with Sonic finally appears. It's so much more interesting than a simple, careless robot. Her interactions with Sonic are also some of my favourites of the game, because you can see how much of an anomaly he is to her. Sonic's freedom directly combats her more statistical nature, so she tries to learn more and more about him throughout the game, whilst leaving her true nature a secret from him. She thinks he's the enemy, she's right, so things get called into question more and more the more Sonic talks about wanting to help her. It's so cool to see her deeply fascinated by how Sonic keeps going and smiling during Rhea Island, no matter how much pain he is truly in. Every interaction with the two is just so awesome to me, and it only gets better when we see her and Eggman. We saw Eggman's POV before within the Egg Memos, but Sage's feelings are reserved for the cutscenes that happen at certain points on each island, where we see how she grows to see him as her father. It's purely logical at first. She tells him the progress Sonic's making, how she's doing with finding a way out of cyberspace for Eggman, etc. He's also quite rigid at first, prioritizing his escape over anything else. However, there are cutscenes sprinkled in showing a deeper connection. She's telling a story of Sonic getting bodied and Eggman finds it hilarious. He mentions Orbot and Cubot, to which she thinks of them as brothers in a sense. She stops a ton of gun airships from shooting him down, which he is extremely proud of. It keeps piling up into this one scene, where she thinks all to herself about all the feelings she feels and has seen from Sonic and the gang, and tears up. She thinks the world will be ending soon, so she is deeply depressed that everyone so interesting to her will end up not mattering in the end. It is such a fascinating depiction of the robot gaining human sentience trope that I have grown to adore throughout my life, leading to a top 5 Sonic character in my eyes. Well, that just about finally covers everything I think I need to cover before talking about the finale, so let's get into it. There unfortunately aren't many cutscenes that progress any characters or major narrative bits on Ouranos, only optional dialogue about unanswered questions left by the ancients, so we'll have to skip over to the genuine finale, where Eggman manages to find the 7th emerald after we just found our 6th. We then go and fight the final Titan, the one who sealed this present away in the first place, Supreme. The brand. Unfortunately, this is by far the weakest one, it's not even close. You gotta destroy one of these sentry thingies floating around, parry a few lasers, then go in for the kill. What the heck, he's already dead. Yeah, this Titan for some reason has no scaled health bar whatsoever, making it pretty painless to take down even for casual players. It may be a situation of, oh, we wanted to show how weak the Titans were in comparison to their adversary, but that doesn't really make sense considering the significantly larger scale and power of the previous Titans. It feels significantly smaller in scope than the others, making it a pretty limp and unfortunate final boss. Kind of. You see, when you take this guy down, the seal breaks, leading to the true form of the being in the sky. The only option now is for Sage to pilot Supreme and reach for the skies alongside Sonic. Eggman says his goodbyes, and the final battle truly begins. This is the final fight against the end, which is what I'll be referring to this being as from now on. It's a giant moon with the power to destroy everything. So, it's time to play Ikaruga. Yeah, this is what the final boss is. Another version of the minigames from previous islands. It's definitely not a bad fight, it's kinda challenging and definitely more fun than previous final bosses. But it's just... what? Why does the game have to end like this? You hear the end yapping about its sheer power throughout the runtime, and obviously the scale isn't as hype as it feels like it should be, so... yeah, good fight, just not good for this game. Once it's nearly down, we get a few QTEs to end it off, yet somehow it still stands. Right before it destroys everything, Sage manages to sacrifice herself and Supreme along with her to save what she loves.
Please, look after Father.
We then cut to Sonic's friends finally out of cyberspace, and him returning to celebrate with them all. It's a nice and simple ending moment for all of them, except for one guy. Eggman looks up to the skies in one last moment of hope that she still stands, but nobody came. He then clenches his fists and the credits roll, along with the song Dear Father playing. It's a really thoughtful and bittersweet theme that represents this ending pretty well. I'm a little mixed on killing off Sage here, as whilst I think the execution of these events were really well done, it feels kinda awkward, especially considering how rushed these final moments feel gameplay-wise. It also doesn't help that there's a post-credits scene showing Eggman recreating Sage anyway, so it really didn't matter in the end, huh? Oh well, at least the mid-credits scene is really neat, showing the excitement of the whole squad ready to take on the world by themselves. Plus, One Way Dream beginning to play is absolutely marvelous. Oh man, we are finally finished with the story. I absolutely love this game's narrative, no matter how rushed these last moments may have clearly been. No matter how much they needed to get this game out, they still tried their damnedest to create the most interesting narrative they could've, with fantastic interpretations of classic characters, brand new arcs for each and every one of them, exceptional new characters that add a lot to other arcs themselves, and a pretty solid inner narrative that hides itself from you for most of the game's runtime. This game is probably a really solid jumping point for people wanting to get into stories that encourage you to piece them together yourself, as it's a pretty simple narrative overall, but still interesting to figure out nonetheless. I have to commend Ian Flint for being the definitive GOAT of this game and so many other modern Sonic stories. I know many people don't like how often he references things of the past, but I feel like in the case of this game and Shadow Generations, it was kinda necessary for character reflection. Well, here's where we would be nearly done and talk about the music, right? Even after all of this content, Sonic Team decided this wasn't enough, and gave us a roadmap of 3 major content updates that would release over the next following year, ending off with an entirely new campaign featuring playable versions of Tails, Knuckles, and Amy for the first time since 06. I would be completely remiss if I didn't at least talk about these now, would I? Let's cover each of them in order, starting with Update 1 came out on March 23rd, 2023, around 4 months after release, and gave us a photo mode, always nice to see, a jukebox with many unlockable songs from Sonic's past, also really cool, and the big one, new challenge modes. Cyberspace Challenge takes you across an island's worth of cyberspace missions in a row, which you have to complete as fast as possible. It's pretty dang fun, but I personally prefer to do them individually. It is worth getting S ranks on all versions though, as you get the ability to use the power boost in cyberspace once completed. This makes most levels leagues better than before, and you can feel the difference right away because you just did all of them without it. Anyways, there's also a battle-focused mode similar to this one named Battle Rush. You fight an assortment of different enemies and guardians from each island, culminating in a refight against a titan. Finally, having a way to replay the coolest moments of the game is really nice, but the difficulty of these can be a bit all over the place because of how you choose to start them. You take your stats from a certain save file, allowing you to potentially steamroll everything at max level, or have the hardest time imaginable at level 1. There's a bit too many options in my opinion for this kind of mode, making it fun, but not for long. Completing this mode unlocks Extreme Mode for the main game, making most attacks kill you in one hit, and forcing you to stay at level 1 for every stat. It also makes the S rank times for cyberspace missions much stricter, except for 1-2 because, yeah, ironically understanding game design better in that regard. I haven't done a full playthrough on this difficulty yet, so I can't say if it's overall better or worse, but the option's always nice to see. Overall, this update added some really nice quality of life changes, some fun new modes, and some new features that only make the game even better. The next update, however, added something that is genuinely a game changer in every sense of the term. Let's talk about Update 2 released on Sonic's birthday, June 24th, and added a good selection of celebratory things, like some optional aesthetical changes, more bouncy and upbeat songs added to the jukebox, alongside some brand new content to sink our teeth into. New Game Plus was finally added, allowing you to play through the whole game again from the beginning with stats carried over from a previous save file. This is especially useful for bringing over a separate feature added in this update, so we'll talk about it more there. New platforming challenges were also added along each island, rewarding you with a large Koco. Collecting them all gives you 4 extra wheels of boost, plus a ton of Koco to use for upgrades naturally. These are genuinely some of the best platforming challenges of the game. They take advantage of a whole host of ideas the main game never really tried using. There's a ton more wall running, they can reach insane heights at points, and it's really fun to try and get around them as much as possible. These honestly make me consider the idea that maybe focusing on larger, more involved platforming is better for this kind of game compared to the 10-second long stimulus, but that's a discussion for later. Also, I briefly mentioned this feature before, but they added an option to maintain boost during a jump, which makes the game like 20% better on its own. Finally, the last major thing is the action chain challenges. These are little modes that test how fast you can explore the islands, rewarding more points for the more stuff you do. They're pretty fun, but do get a little old having to do 10 per island, especially if all done in a row like I tend to do. It does at least require some effort from the player, and is absolutely necessary to complete for anyone's playthrough, because of what you get at the end. Completing all S ranks on all action chain challenges gives you the spin dash. Now, this might not seem like anything too crazy. Why would we need this if the boost is right there? Well, let's take a look at how far I can go with the normal jump with the boost thingy enabled. Here's with the spin dash. This thing gives you the exact freedom I wished for earlier, as it completely ignores any and all bits of geometry that may stop momentum. Think of a cool skip to get a memory token? You can just do that now without needing to bother with really any setup whatsoever. This may seem a bit too broken at first, but seriously, it's something you need to feel in comparison to the normal game to truly realize how exceptional it is. This move is exactly what Sonic Team needs to embrace going forward, making you truly feel free to go from one place to another at basically the speed of sound. So yeah, I'd argue this update was even better than the first, purely because of that single addition. It's unfortunate you need to go through every challenge to get it, sure, but 1, it makes you compare right away how much more fun the game is with it, and 2, if you go through the game at level 1, which really isn't hard to do, let's be real, you can start a new game plus file with only that unlocked, allowing you to experience the whole game with it. I love Sonic Frontiers, sure, but I adore Sonic Frontiers Spin Dash Edition. There's only one more update we need to cover now, and it is by far the one that'll take the longest to talk about. So, let's explore Ouranos one final time. The final Horizon update, released on September 28th, is entirely focused on the brand new campaign, which is more of a different ending to the game instead of continuing on from what we have. We'll talk about each part of it when we get there, so let's get into it. The campaign begins with Sonic just having arrived on Ouranos Island, right after his friends sacrificed their normal forms for him, as well as the temporary allegiance having been formed between Eggman and Sonic. Sage interrupts his exploration to explain that a new possibility so unlikely she never considered it may be feasible. It'll allow everyone to be truly saved, so Sonic naturally agrees to it. The plan entails Sonic learning how to channel his cyber corruption into power, whilst Tails, Amy and Knuckles go look for the emeralds. This is great. It's a natural way of incorporating a new strain of the story that only adds and doesn't take away. It's even utilizing the biggest problem with the game's story originally, Sonic's cyber corruption. After this, we get to control our first side character, Amy, so let's cover how she works alongside the structure of this DLC. Amy plays the most like Sonic out of all of the 3 new playable characters, but she's generally slower and more methodical with her gameplay. It's a lot more about precise movements instead of speed, which is apparent with her triple jump ability. She gets to float down slower after performing it, and the game takes advantage of that. There's a lot of really cool moments and challenges as her, leading to her being probably the best of the 3. Now, when you begin playing as each character, you'll notice that you have basically no moves available to you. This is because of the extended skill tree for each character. It may seem bigger and more exciting than Sonic's from the base game, but it's greatly misleading due to the placement of extremely basic moves in it. Plus, you get XP and skill points from these Koco placed around the islands instead of enemies, and it's surprisingly easy to get most skills by the end of your first time as a character. This is greatly emblematic of the general thesis of this DLC. It improves greatly on some major aspects of the base game, but the balance is completely out of whack. Take the Guardians for instance. It's likely that you'll never fight a single one on a playthrough, and even if you tried, you'd probably die immediately. However, if you level up one of the 3 characters a decent amount, they die in literal seconds. It's good that they make the Guardians tougher, yes, but why are they basically useless and become super easy after leveling up a bit? Anyways, we'll get back to the issue of balance later. Let's talk a bit more about the certain skills Amy unlocks. I like the Heartlock thingy that defeats a bunch of enemies in a row with one homing attack. They tend to use these enemies with it, forcing you to think more about timing, which is cool. Every character shares the spin dash somewhere on the tree, which is obviously amazing, and they all have their own version of power boost, which varies greatly on usefulness. Amy also has a cool high jump after a stomp, as well as this card spin attack that looks neat. One problem, however, is that there's a ton of moves that have forced input lag because of their animation. Amy's power boost, for instance, is almost always something I never want to use, because of how long it takes to start up. Just use the spin dash at that point. It gets worse with the others, so look forward to that, but thankfully the lag is only on a more optional move for Amy than the rest. There's also a tiny bit of noticeable input lag when doing a homing attack or beginning a side loop carried over to the rest too, at least in comparison to Sonic for some reason. There's no reason why this is here, it's just kinda weird, but not the worst thing in the world, I guess. Finally, the structure of these segments is extremely simple. It always tells you where to go, and in the extremely low amount of times where an item is required to progress, it is pathetically easy to get through. This is arguably even faster paced than the main game in this regard, but it does mean that most items are basically useless. You never really need to fight anything, skill points only help with traversal for a bit until you only need attacking moves, and the lookout Koco required for Sonic's progression are the easiest things in the world to find. This campaign, to me, feels more like a test round for new playable characters and a harder difficulty. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, not at all, I still really enjoy it, but I would really love to see some major steps taken in the next game, thinking about what works from each major release in recent years. Bit of a tangent away from Amy, so let's get to that conclusion. Amy's got some really cool potential with her gameplay, and I would love to see this expanded upon. On to the roughest of the rest of them. Knuckles apparently kinda sucked when this DLC was originally released. His flying controls were really stiff, the climbing controls didn't fare much better, and there were so many little annoyances. At least from what I've heard. As I said about an hour ago at this point, I never played this at launch, so I have no idea how it was when it came out. That doesn't really matter now though, as things have changed. Knuckles is great. A lot of his segments include moving from one block to another via gliding and climbing, and they function really well. It's weird that facing the camera downwards will make you climb down if you're holding up, and it's not super easy to turn around 180 degrees when you overshoot in flying, but these problems don't come up enough to be truly infuriating to me. This is where the input delays start to become worse, however, as Knuckles' stomp has this giant animation to it you can't skip. He doesn't have a delay on his power boost, unlike Amy at least, so that's actually worth getting for him. I believe his glide had a delay before the hotfixes though, so I'm extremely glad that I didn't experience that. Anyways, his combat moves are pretty neat as well, and I like how you have to destroy these impact forms to be able to progress. Each character actually has to perform something that's unique to themselves, which I think is really neat. I think with Knuckles, however, you'll probably come across the most frustration, as there are these little annoyances you'll come across when climbing, for instance. Like, hitting a ceiling will cause you to slowly fall down, with you unable to input anything until the animation stops. It's stuff like that that ultimately makes Knuckles the weakest one to play as, which hurts my soul to say, man, he's the GOAT in the story. Tails is the last new character you gain access to, and he's probably the most mixed of them all. He obviously can fly in the air for extended periods, making for some pretty interesting platforming. He attacks by throwing wrenches at things from a distance, which replaces his homing attack. Yeah, for some reason Tails can't reach tiny targets super easily, so there's a lot of stuff that's just easier to ignore and save for later instead of doing it now. The platforming design for him isn't affected by this, thankfully, and it does make him stand out a ton from the others, sure, but it never feels good trying to do something, only to realize it's basically impossible for him because of no homing attack. He also has the most amount of input delay for his actions out of all of the characters. A long animation before beginning flight, a drill stomp that takes a good while, and a delay on his special power boost that's also the most broken thing in the game. It's a cool reference to Sonic Adventure 2, yes, but you can literally fly anywhere and skip any platforming with ease. The spin dash is fun broken because you still have to put in effort to find where to launch off of, but this lets you do anything, anywhere. Okay, that's a lot of complaining, sorry about that, because I still really love playing as him. His platforming is probably some of the most unique and cool stuff the game does, from reaching platforms behind rings that'll shoot you back, to performing a side loop that takes you over a giant drop. Again, he's pretty mixed here, having some really broken and not well thought out stuff, but also having some of the best platforming out of all three. This leads me to say that he's the second best of them all, as there's not really much jank to his controls in comparison to Knuckles, where you'll probably fall off a decent amount of climbing platforms you need to. We finally covered each of the new 3s, so let's get back to the cool blue guy and see what he has to contend with. The awesome thing about this update is that it basically combines Rhea and Ouranos into one. This is because Sonic now needs to reach the top of 5 towers and complete some major challenge that allows him to unlock the power of his cyber energy. These are brand new, even tougher versions of the towers on Rhea, and are absolutely the best bits of platforming in the whole game. You're supposed to complete the brand new remix cyberspace missions in order to get the lookout Kocos which unlock each tower, but side-looping random treasure beacons will give you one randomly, never feeling like you ever need to engage with them. I wouldn't be surprised if some thought they just didn't exist here. They're quite obscure because of the other mechanics. Why don't we briefly cover each one real quick, just to make sure we do everything. 4-A is based on Genshi and introduces this really cool rocket boost that is more similar to the one from the more traditional boost games. It's quite expansive and feels good to play. 4B is Escape the Loop and features a silly hologram tails you have to beat to the end. There's a lot of jumping in the air and landing on the next platform, so it's not as fast paced as the last, but still pretty damn good. 4C takes on Arrow of Time and combines the new stuff from the last 2 to give us the most automated one of these. Yippee! 4D is Rumble Rave and introduces these mines you can easily avoid by just kind of moving normally. They do nothing, but the level's kinda neat, I guess. Dropaholic is what 4E remixes, and you've got a bomb that'll explode unless you finish the stage. That definitely improves the feel of it, as the stage itself feels quite similar to the others in this batch. 4F takes Hype Street and definitely makes it better, but not by much. I just don't think it flows the greatest, unfortunately. 4G is Ephemeral, which was one of my favourites, but I don't think this version does it justice, sadly. There's this new revving system where Sonic speed will naturally increase the more you boost on the ground, but the level design never lets you have enough time to play around with the maxed out boost. Plus, the controls get worse the faster you go, making you hit one of the cars and lose it all extremely fast. This one's mid. 4H, Wishes in the Wind, is way too long for its own good, but has some pretty neat ideas I'd like to see expanded upon. Finally, 4I is Time Flyer, and significantly reduces gravity, which is more fun than I expected. There's a lot of downtime in each jump, sure, but it's fun to launch to heights you never could before. And that's it. The goal requirements are different this time around, with every stage having the numbered and moon rings from forces, which work the same way. They're solid, it really depends on the level. There's some hidden level exits which are super cool, would love to see this idea expanded upon. There's also these animal body missions. You carry one to a certain place with most movement options restricted. They're fine, they function, and the other types of goals I've kinda already mentioned. Do not do all of these missions in one go though. You will lose your mind trying to get this stuff done. Each one took around a half hour each. Anyways, these are overall kinda mixed. I like what most of these do with the levels themselves, but I think the execution is a little all over the place. Kinda like the DLC as a whole. Long tangent aside, let's get back to those towers, as they're damn awesome. The first tower almost feels like a skill check, making sure you know how to play the game. It makes you do these pretty precise jumps across various platforms, whilst giving you loads of room to skip stuff if you're confident. It's a great way to start these, and the challenge directly after is no different. It's a tough as nails fight against a collection of the hardest versions of basic enemies at level 1. You really have to take your time with this one, using basically every move in your arsenal. It feels great to get through, leading to, honestly, the best one of these challenges there is. Yeah, that means it's only down from here. Tower 2 is probably the toughest one of the bunch, mainly because of how careful you have to be towards the end. There's a lot of bomb cubes you gotta avoid, and it's pretty precise towards the beginning, but manageable. This last section, however, gets real mean to you, and it's super cool because of that. Probably not a favourite of mine, but still a fun one to get to on a playthrough. Unfortunately, the challenge is kinda terrible. There's 4 sped up versions of the enemies you need to side-loop to damage, and it is so dang boring side-looping 15 times for each enemy, only to barely make the time limit. There's a decently cool way to do it where you parry the attack sequentially, but it's super difficult to get consistently, and is so clearly not the intended solution. This is the worst challenge of the bunch, by far. On to Tower 3, which emphasizes wall running in one of the best ways the game does. It feels so good here as a complementary part of the platforming, instead of purely automated segments. I will say that you probably should not have leveled up speed too much, as it makes wall running a bit too unwieldy, especially here. You can always switch the levels of rings and speed at a nearby Elder Koco if that'll help you. This is a great one, unlike the challenge, which is pathetically easy this time. It's supposed to be a faster version of the boring dogs, but ends up working the exact same because of the parry. This one doesn't deserve my time onto Tower 4, which might be my favourite. It plays around with fans and rails in some super stressful and fun ways. I never feel safe climbing this one, and I mean that in the best way possible. I love the circle rails you can launch off of, the fans get riskier and riskier to use, and reaching the top is the most satisfying of them all to me. It's funny, as I remember struggling with this one the most. Next up is Challenge 4, which is also, unfortunately, easy. It's a souped up fight against Ninja, and you parry its attacks 3 or 4 times to win. That's it. Only the first one really feels like a genuine challenge, which is a true shame considering how great the climbs are. Oh well, after this you go through another round of the 3 side characters finishing up their business, but we've already gone in depth about them well enough in my eyes to where I don't think I need to continue about them. So why not make our way over to Sonic's final tower, the final challenge to prove that he has the potential to face these impossible odds. Tower 5 is a really cool and expansive platforming challenge, with many satisfying jumps into the sky I love. It uses a ton of cannons for a bit of scare factor, but it honestly is probably one of the easiest of the bunch. A lot of the type platforming it presents is right after a huge jump the game really encourages you to do, and whilst I do love how it feels, I think a bit of added challenge would have made this one land so much more. It's not a disappointment at least, unlike the previous challenges. Speaking of said challenges, it's time for the final one, the one which separates the boys from the men, and the men from the titans. The Master Koco Trial. This is a rematch against Giganto, Wyvern, and Knight all in a row at level 1 with rings shed across them all and none able to be replenished. This sounds damn awesome. A true level of difficulty needed, right? Well, there's one tiny, just little thing that they added that I didn't mention. They made the parry an actual parry. That's right, they did exactly what I asked them to. And I'm still gonna complain about it. It's not the perfect parry that's the problem here. It's that the bosses tend to have really weird timings. Some attacks are really well choreographed. Giganto's hand slap, Knight's shield, his sword swipes, they all make sense to parry. Wyvern is the opposite. The missiles you have to parry at first are really weird with depth perception. And don't get me started on his body attacks. Wyvern is really the only problem with all of these, and especially considering you have to do the climb up the Titans as well as the fight, it can get really annoying after a long while of attempts. Don't forget, however, that there are lower difficulties of the game, which increase the parry timer to help you learn it better. It's probably best to start on normal, which gives you around a second of a window, then go to hard, which is much tighter. Overall, I'd still say that this is a perfect challenge just before the brand new final boss, and it most certainly gets you ready for what happens in that thing. Well, I don't see anything around that needs covering, so it's finally time to cover this redemption of a boss fight. Sage interrupts Sonic on a run to talk about how he's done the trials and how his friends aren't doing too well. Yeah, they all start to suffer from the cyber corruption too, and they all had scenes of them suffering before their second Chaos Emeralds, which was super sad to see. They don't want to disappoint the main man, however, so they kept at it and gathered 6 of them, with Eggman finding the last just like the main game. They're all gathered together one final time to truly, definitively, finally finish what the Ancients started. So do Supreme again. Yeah, they didn't change this fight in the slightest, which is deeply disappointing, honestly. Surely they could have lifted you in the air a little bit more in the second phase or something, just for that added flair it needed, but no, it's the same. What is not the same, however, is the end. Instead of an Ikaruga clone for no reason, it's an entirely revamped second phase of Supreme, where it takes control of the Titan and significantly buffs it, adding new arms to its back in a scene with a beautiful new I'm Here orchestral version. You start off doing no damage, but then Sonic begins to utilize his new cyber powers to create a new form for Super. Cyber Supersonic. Or Supersonic 2 if you're dumb. Cyber's such a better name. What this does is allow you to parry the cyber orbs thrown at you, reducing it to the perfect parry from the Master King's trial. This is why they made you go through all of that. It doesn't come out of nowhere in the slightest, and ups the stakes in a way that was absolutely necessary. We haven't even gone into the new scenes yet. You can parry the back arms to counter with the most aura move imaginable, your rings get reduced significantly towards the end with another awesome transformation, bro grabs you in his hand starting a QTE, the final sequence is nothing short of exceptional. This is the glow up the fight needed from a spectacle perspective. They even gave every major character a role to play here. Eggman essentially deals the final blow, and the others block him from lasers. It is probably the coolest fight in the game visually now, beating Giganto and Knight by a country mile. Of course, however, like pretty much everything else in this DLC, there are some iffy aspects. The main mechanics of the fight are just not explained to you. Firstly, you gotta bring it down to no health and then side-loop the hole on its back to release its gun. Side-loop it again to give it to Eggman, who will use it to help with the final blow. It'll regenerate its entire health bar for its second phase, where you have to attack not its head, but the wire connecting it to the end, as it'll regenerate any damage dealt to it if not done. Keep damaging it until you take it down. Huh? This stuff is not really communicated to you well in the slightest. And you know what the funniest part is? They knew that, as the 100% completion reward for the whole DLC is tips on how to beat the dang thing. Call me silly, but I don't think that learning how to beat the final boss should be locked behind something like that. Even then, it's honestly not really too interesting from a gameplay perspective still, as it's pretty easy to knock its health down to 0 on any phase, as long as you don't mess up the parry timings of the orbs, which are, thankfully, well communicated to you. I wouldn't be surprised if this killed the fight for a ton of people, as I've seen a lot of stories of people getting stuck here due to confusion. However, I think this is a case of not having fun at first, and having fun once you get it. Sorta like a lot of Sonic games actually. Once you understand how to actually fight this thing, you will be floored by the sheer scale of this thing, just like me. I love this final fight, despite the miscommunication being a bit of an edge downwards on the thing as a whole. Nevertheless, if you make it to the final cutscene, you get this glorious moment of Eggman lining up Supreme's gun to fire at it and the end with Cyber Supersonic as the bullet. The coolest thing I've ever said in my life aside, I love how Eggman says, "It's now or never," as a reference to what Sonic tells Sage in the main game's final fight. Sonic then decides that the only way to truly defeat both megaliths is to let the cyber corruption fully take him over, leading to this insane shot where he gets shot, referencing the Fleetway Sonic comics, which is so damn cool, bro. Supreme gets vaporized. The end is completely blasted through and explodes, and Sonic is left in space, completely withered. Somehow, some way, however, he managed to survive this feat, waking up to his friends, who congratulate him. This is all the same as what happened in the main game, except for one thing. Sage survived. Eggman now has someone he cares for, and someone who cares for him back. This shot, especially after what we saw in the main game, genuinely gives me close to tears, man. It is truly the perfect bookend to this game's legacy, and the brand new, more hopeful song that plays during the credits only adds on to that feeling. Everything else after this, the mid-credit scene and One-Way Dream, stays the same, excluding the post-credit scene of course, because there's no reason for it. A new one would have been cool, but I'm so fine with this shot, dude. And we're done? Oh my god, we're done! That's pretty much the main meat of my Frontiers discussion. If you're still watching this, thanks a ton for sticking with it to the near end, as this was probably the biggest undertaking I've ever had with a video. I seriously love this game with all of my heart, despite its shortcomings, and what's that? A final message to the fans added after the DLC's complete release? We dedicate this game to all players who supported us. Thank you for playing. Let's talk about this real quick. What Sonic Frontiers truly represents to me is passion. I touched on this within the Mania video, but I feel it's even more with this game somehow. After the failure of Forces, Sonic Team needed to try something new. This, like many times before, could have been the last entry of games from the franchise, as the movies were succeeding so much more than the more recent games. This was their chance to prove that Sonic works, that Sonic can be good in the modern day. And it worked. Thanks to the insane hype entirely surrounding the Titan fights, Sonic became cool again. Those fights work because of confidence to me. I feel every ounce of heart and soul poured into every second of each song, as if they knew with 100% certainty that this would be the game changer they needed it to be. This truly feels like the inverse of Forces to me, whereas that game feels like the complete removal of joy and whimsy due to restrictions. This game feels like taking advantage of any and all restrictions, despite some working against the game. I can tell they really tried here is what I'm getting at, no matter any technical problems that may be. This is one of those games which I don't think anyone can make me hate. I just don't feel the major effects of the fundamental problems. Speaking of those problems, however, I don't think it's a good idea to not acknowledge them, and whilst we're on the cusp of a new game announcement from the time I'm writing this, let's talk about what I think needs improving for the next game to make it truly perfect. Firstly, make the parry an actual parry. They moved forward with the DLC, sure, but I think making a guard function that's tied to the same keybinds, only you hold instead of tap, would be more ideal. Basically, look at Dark Souls and just do that. Cyberspace also needs a ton of glow-ups, and the next game actually does pretty much everything I'd want it to do. Brand new level design, a lower amount in general, mainly 3D, and a ton of shortcuts to discover. I think if each island had like 2 or 3 boost-styled levels and you only needed to do 1 or 2 to progress the story, that would be cool. Or make the player do all of them, that wouldn't be bad either. Spread it more out across the island story though. The open zones don't need a lot of changes in my eyes. Just focus on giving us as much freedom as what the spin dash gives us, and there you go. Environmental design could use a touch-up, weirdly. I didn't talk about the giant rail structures that are just about the place. A lot of people have problems with this. I don't, but I also won't deny that making these fit with the environment better would be ideal. Make the fishing more robust, or less easy to cheese the entire game with, that's an obvious one. I think more unique events to each island would be cool, like a sandstorm on Ares Island. That would make them stand out a lot more. Obviously, greater biome variety is needed. I don't want 60% grass next time. Combat's pretty okay for the most part, I just think speeding it up as a whole would feel much more satisfying. I'm happy with the game structure, no problems there, but they need to balance the playable characters more, or do something different with them in my eyes. Maybe take the classic Sonic structure of differing playable characters each playthrough. You could change up the boost stages to work with each one's style. There's not a lot to say about the story, I guess animate the optional bits of dialogue better if you're gonna do them, but it really depends on what the next game does to show us if they're locked in. Finally, I could say the Titan fights are perfect, but the gameplay does need to improve. Take a look at how Night forces you to think about your surroundings more in its second phase thanks to the shield parrying. If we do more of that, we'd get fights that play just as good as they feel. Spectacular's obviously perfect however, so we're done there, and we're also done with this quickfire segment. I want to see Sonic be the best it can be, and it can only reach that with constructive criticism. I'm only trying to improve what I love, not take what I love, so don't think I'm being a hypocrite for this. I do have one last section of the video we have to do, and I'll try to make it short, but that's gonna be hard as nuts because... Sonic Frontiers not only has my favourite Sonic soundtrack, but it is also amongst my top 5 favourite video game soundtracks too. I get that some people don't like the more EDM-focused tunes of this game, but we've got a little bit of everything here. Previously mentioned EDM, funk, lo-fi, emo rock, frickin' dubstep for crying out loud. I think you just haven't found what you like if you say this one's not for you. We'll try to cover as little as possible because there's over like 200 songs in this whole thing, so let's jump into it. We'll do 2 cyberspace themes from each island, so 1-2 Flowing. This one basically became the main theme of cyberspace for a reason. It was used in the Frontiers medley and Sonic Symphony concerts, it's remixed as the track from Crossworlds. Let's just vibe. (1-5) Dropaholic is excitement in a trench coat. These drops and little main melodies just hit the back of my brain in such unique ways. (2-2) Heavenly Sky is simply really interesting. These songs manage to combine intense moments with chill vibes, and this is a great example of that. (2-6) Transparent Highway just feels cool, man. It's one of the most your Sonic feelings of the setlist, dude. (3-2) Go Slap has always been memorable and underrated to me. It's so damn catchy. (3-6) Enjoy This World is right amongst the other super hype songs to me. Just pure happiness, which is weirdly unlikely in these levels. (4-2) Ephemeral is one of the most chill songs of cyberspace, and I get in a trance whenever it comes on. (4-5) Arrow of Time gives me feelings I don't know how to describe. It's such a unique song I can't see being replicated anywhere. Kronos, Ares, and Chaos Island all have 7 different versions of their main themes that all build up more and more the further you progress their stories. It's tough to pick a favourite, so I won't play any here. I'll probably just throw up a list of cool ones on the screen right now. I haven't given many of the Guardians themes a try, but I really love Ghosts. It's got a super catchy and addictive main melody that just repeats for the whole thing. I love it. Fishing Vibes genuinely made my jaw drop when I listened to it for the first time. Big the Cat Lo-Fi was something I never knew I needed, but now I can't get enough. Let's give you Tonal Whiplash. Here's Undefeatable. This is probably up there as one of the greatest songs I've ever listened to. It never fails to completely captivate me in power and true intensity I've never seen done from any other song out there. Listening to it for the first time at that encounter is a life-changing moment. No exaggeration. Breakthrough It All seems to be at the top of these boss themes according to the general consensus, but I can't agree with that. I absolutely love it, don't get me wrong, it's 9 out of 10, but the structure really threw me through a loop the first time, and I just think the other themes have stronger moments and feelings. Again though, 9.8 out of 10. Find Your Flame is where it's at, dude. The guy who did Infinite's theme returns in this exceptional continuation of Adrenaline Incarnate, scoring the best designed one of these bosses beautifully.
Will the whole world know your name? When we dance with destiny.
one-way dream feels so interesting to me. I feel like I should cry listening to it, but it never happens. I guess I'm too into singing it where I just can't find time to cry though. It's amazing.
Boost your spirit off the ground. I'm a spark that won't go out.
Onto the DLC. Each character gets their own theme that plays in the open zone, and they're all great. Maybe If Amy is one I listened to before the game came out, and was flawed then, and I still am now. Blood Flow is so cool. It doesn't sound like one of Knuckles' songs from SA2, but would still fit in amongst those perfectly.
There's a time to take it slow. Let the blood inside you flow. Find a way to the unknown. Yeah, trust yourself and let it go.
Another passage is the weakest one to me, but it still feels delightfully intense and floaty at the same time, matching Tails and his situation very well. Second Wind is Sonic's one, for when going through the first 4 towers, and it feels just as free as the dude himself. It matches him so much better than it would at first glance. It's kinda shocking. The cyberspace remixes here are all generally more intense than their counterparts, and lean even more into EDM, so let's cover 2 of them. 4-C Arrow of Time feels like it's mind controlling you at its drop. It's so unique. G Ephemeral takes the kinda relaxing OG version and adds this super cool bit which I think are vocals? I don't know, but I really love it. Guardian Caterpillar in this DLC is a really cool new version of a song I haven't really listened to outside of the game. Oh well, this version's super neat. I mentioned it before, but the orchestral I'm Here is simply beautiful in the first part of the final fight. It feels like a true ending the journey deserves. But then you hear the beginning of I'm Here Revisited. Oh boy, you're in for something. This version is miles above the OG to me. It's why I've used it instead of that version mostly in this vid. It marks this ending as something truly special, especially when those vocals drop.
I'm here, reaching far across these new frontiers. With my life, I fight this fear.
And we're done. I could talk about like 70 other songs if I wanted to, but I really wanted to make sure I can manage creating this thing at all, so that's it. I truly love this soundtrack with all of my heart, and urge you to check out every little bit of it. Even the cutscene music and jingles are awesome. You don't just casually do that. Well, I think I've now truly covered every possible angle I can talk about Sonic Frontiers. You know what that means. It's time to end this. Sonic Frontiers is my favorite Sonic game, not just because it plays exceptionally, not just because it looks really cool, not just because the story's immaculate, not just because it sounds beautiful, it's the passion. The clear efforts put into all aspects of the game, even the less major parts like cyberspace. They made new controls there for a reason if they don't play as well as the open zones. I truly feel every second I play this game, all 120 hours I've burned into it. 100 on Steam, and around 20 to 25 on Switch, my first playthrough. This game made me see a different side to Sonic I never got to see, having grown up on Nintendo consoles in the 2010s. I played Lost World and Forces, so that was all I ever really thought of Sonic being like. This game made me see a different angle, and I have to thank every single person on the dev team for making a game that means this much to me. Well, all of this may make you wonder why I left second place out. That's because I wanted to make the final solo game episode on it as a way of cycling back to my first major video on the series that became all about it towards the end. Let's just rip the band-aid off, huh? Here's the title reveal thing. I'll see you when that comes out. Goodbye.